because the frustrations have built up, and now I'll speak for myself, the frustration is at a very high level, that there are key priorities provincially that we're communicating to the federal government, and we're just not seeing that reaction that we would hope.
Hashtag Alberta's separation is trending on X. Have a look at this tweet. See right here, the Alberta Prosperity Project already has 100,000 signatures on a commitment to vote yes on a referendum on Alberta's separation.
I take that seriously, and I hope that the federal government takes that seriously.
The unthinkable is happening. Western Canada has officially reached its breaking point with Ottawa's economic exploitation. Multiple provinces are now coordinating separation plans that could literally tear this country apart within the next 2 years.
It strikes me that the program is broken.
Next big thing that we want to send a message to the rest of Canada about is this. You can't do nation building without the First Nations of this land.
What I'm about to reveal shows just how close we are to witnessing the complete disintegration of Canada as we know it.
The new question is the Yukon, that forgotten northern territory that Ottawa treats like it never even existed as they look south to Alberta's rebellion. Will they also decide that their future lies also outside of Confederation?
In a shocking development that nobody saw coming, Yukon Territory has become the surprise addition to the Western separation movement. The territory is now exploring joining the broader WEXIT program as part of a Western Canadian Confederation that would include British Columbia, Alberta, Saskatchewan, and Manitoba, plus the Northern Territories. Yukon's decision transforms WEXIT from a purely provincial movement into a comprehensive Western and Northern Canadian independence coalition. This new alliance would control vast resource wealth and strategic Arctic territory, making the potential confederation economically viable and geographically coherent in ways that individual provincial separation could never achieve.
The party says Albertans deserve clarity on their future, and delaying this decision only deepens the challenges we face.
Breaking news from Quebec has completely blindsided political observers across the nation. In an unprecedented move, Quebec's leadership has announced they are working alongside Alberta to pursue complete separation from Canada. This alliance represents a seismic shift in Canadian politics that changes everything.
On several occasions, I hear Alberta speaking, and I'm just, okay, I actually think the same.
Working together to separate. The leader of the Parti Québécois here in Alberta on ways our province can work with Quebec on leaving Canada.
The Quebec leader's announcement on Thursday that he is collaborating with Alberta in separation efforts has sent shockwaves through Ottawa. While 84% of Quebecers believe independence for their own province remains unlikely, there's growing sentiment among Quebec political circles that Western separation might actually serve their strategic interests.
We don't shut the gate. This is not true. We are lowering our goals, our scenarios.
Quebec's calculation here is politically brilliant. With 45% of French-speaking Quebecers still supporting independence, they're viewing Western separation as a potential pathway to reshape Canadian federalism entirely. If Alberta and Saskatchewan leave, Quebec suddenly becomes the dominant force in what remains of Canada, essentially achieving the political leverage they've sought for decades without the complications of their own referendum.
They are going to do a constitutional lens test on it, so I'll just leave the court to go through their process.
Alberta has transformed from making threats to building serious political machinery for departure. Premier Danielle Smith's government has systematically removed every bureaucratic obstacle through Bill 54, which lowered the referendum threshold from 600,000 signatures to just 177,000. The Alberta Prosperity Project has completely obliterated these requirements, collecting over 250,000 signatures when they only needed 177,000.
They are going to do a constitutional lens test on it, so I'll just leave the court to go through their process.
Smith has committed to placing the separation question directly on the 2026 provincial referendum ballot. The referendum question cuts straight to constitutional bedrock. Do you agree that the province of Alberta should become a sovereign country and cease to be a province of Canada? Yes or no? This isn't symbolic. It's a constitutional deadline that puts enormous pressure on federal politicians.
$600 billion in the last 40 or 50 years that have been taken out of this province.
The numbers driving Alberta's frustration are staggering. The province generates 4.2 million barrels of oil daily. contributing 14% of Canada's entire economic output, using just 11% of the population. Yet Alberta has sent $250 billion more to Ottawa than it received back over the past decade, a $250 billion wealth transfer that would make any region question their political arrangements. What makes Smith's strategy particularly devastating for Ottawa is her systematic documentation of federal interference in provincial jurisdiction. The Premier has watched Ottawa cancel billion-dollar pipeline projects like Northern Gateway and Energy East, while simultaneously collecting massive tax revenues from the resources those projects would transport. This creates a devastating cycle where Alberta generates wealth that Ottawa redistributes to other provinces while blocking the very infrastructure needed to maximize that wealth creation.
It is siphoned out of our system to go to Ottawa so that it can be spent mostly in Quebec, but also in other places that vote Liberal. We have been watching this for years.
Smith's frustration with the equalization payment system has become her primary evidence of federal abuse. Alberta contributes billions annually to a system that sends over $13 billion to Quebec, the same province that actively opposes Alberta's pipeline development through environmental lawsuits and political lobbying. This forces Alberta taxpayers to subsidize the very provinces that sabotage their economic development. Current polling shows 49% of Albertans now support separation, up from 38% before the last federal election. Among Conservative Party supporters, a staggering 65% back independence. These aren't fringe numbers anymore. This represents a substantial political movement with real staying power.
And, those feelings of alienation are a response to the policies that have been put in place.
Saskatchewan Premier Scott Moe officially opposes separation, but his government has quietly aligned provincial referendum laws with Alberta's playbook. The province's Referendum and Plebiscite Act now requires 60% support and 50% turnout for binding results, establishing legal mechanisms that separatist movements can exploit. Make sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell right now, because what happens next in this constitutional crisis will completely reshape North America. You won't want to miss these explosive updates that mainstream media is completely ignoring. Saskatchewan's economic grievances mirror Alberta's fiscal frustrations, but with agricultural dimensions that make federal interference even more devastating. The province dominates global wheat, potash, and uranium exports, with most production heading directly to international markets, rather than Eastern Canadian destinations. Yet federal policies could cost Saskatchewan's economy $111 billion by 2035, according to provincial analysis.
I'm frustrated with the unconsulted decisions that have come from Ottawa for the last period of time. Should that change?
Moe has become increasingly aggressive in challenging federal authority, publishing a comprehensive list of federal policy changes demanded for resetting the relationship with Ottawa. This reads more like an ultimatum than a negotiation request. The Premier has joined the New West Partnership Trade Agreement, demonstrating how Western provinces can cooperate economically without Ottawa's involvement. Premier David Eby has made a remarkable strategic shift toward greater independence from federal oversight. He's actively pursuing international partnerships with Japan, South Korea, and Malaysia that bypass federal trade policies, while supporting Alberta's Energy Corridor initiative without requiring federal subsidies.
For a meeting with the Prime Minister, an array of issues. Since I came into being the Premier, it's been a couple years now, and we haven't had that meeting.
BC's fiscal relationship with Ottawa mirrors the exploitation experienced by other Western provinces. The province sends $26 billion annually to federal coffers, while receiving only $18 billion in return, an $8 billion annual deficit that could fund provincial infrastructure improvements if BC retained control over its revenues. Eby has restructured BC's approach to major resource development, demanding private financing without taxpayer subsidies, while streamlining provincial approvals. This eliminates federal involvement while accelerating development timelines, proving provinces can deliver billion-dollar projects faster and cheaper than federal programs.
Working the way it's intended, that it's no longer about services, it's about something else entirely. And it was the federal government's decision to put it in the Constitution.
Among younger British Columbians, 37% believe their province could function independently, while 66% of Cascadia independent supporters fall within the 18 to 34 age demographic. These numbers suggest that separation sentiment will strengthen as older generations attached to federal institutions are replaced by voters with weaker emotional connections to Canadian identity.
Manitoba quietly playing the corridor card.
Manitoba represents the ultimate test case for Western solidarity. The Western Canada Party advocates for a four-province confederation, including British Columbia, Alberta, Saskatchewan, and Manitoba, plus territories. This would create a resource-rich nation stretching from Pacific coastlines to prairie heartlands. Manitoba's strategic position as the gateway between Western and Eastern Canada makes it crucial for any separation scenario. The province controls significant hydroelectric capacity and serves as a vital transportation corridor. While separation sentiment isn't as strong in Manitoba as in neighboring provinces, their inclusion would be essential for Western Confederation viability.
We're putting in the work at the provincial level, but we need to hear the federal leaders talk about you, the people, and put you first.
Manitoba faces similar federal interference patterns in agricultural and mining sectors, with carbon pricing policies and environmental regulations that harm resource development, while equalization formulas redistribute the province's wealth to less productive regions. If these Western provinces follow through on separation, the economic devastation for what remains of Canada would be catastrophic beyond anything Ottawa publicly acknowledges. We're talking about losing approximately 75% of Canada's oil and gas production, massive agricultural output, and some of the most resource-rich territories in North America. The federal government would face an immediate fiscal crisis as equalization payments collapse and the tax base shrinks dramatically.
Independent states as a matter of international law, and the Supreme Court did acknowledge that that was a possibility.
Without Alberta's $70 billion annual contribution to federal coffers alone, Ottawa would face an immediate $20 billion shortfall. The domino effect would be devastating. Quebec would lose the $13 billion in federal transfers funded primarily by Western resources, forcing them into their own fiscal emergency that could make sovereignty economically mandatory rather than culturally preferred. Consider what remains of Canada in this scenario. Ontario and the Maritime provinces would inherit a politically fragmented, economically unviable confederation stripped of its resource wealth and conservative voting power. The Western Confederation would control 40% of Canada's trade by value through Vancouver's ports, vast energy reserves, and agricultural production that feeds global markets. This isn't just political separation, it's economic warfare that would permanently reshape North American geography and leave Eastern Canada struggling to maintain basic government services without Western subsidization. If you don't want to miss out the massive developments in this exit movement, hit subscribe now, because 2026 is shaping up to be the year that completely redraws the map of North America.